Hey guys, welcome back to Wrestling News 365. Hope everyone is doing well and staying safe. Today we're going to talk a little bit about the re-emergence of the wildcard rule. Even if it's not called the wildcard rule or whatever it's being called, let's just be honest, the wildcard rule is back. Temporarily, permanently, who knows, but it's back once again. Now, this was announced last week. It had kind of been rumoured for a week or so prior to the official announcement, but the rumour was that due to the declining ratings or live viewership of Monday Night Raw and Friday Night Smackdown on Fox, that the executives of the USA Network and Fox had asked for more Superstars of Raw or Smackdown to be featured on the respective shows, and thus the wildcard rule is returning. The official announcement was made last week on Raw, in that we had the announcement that this coming week, at the time of recording, this is going to be recorded on the Monday prior to Monday Night Raw, with SmackDown's King Corbin facing Monday Night Raw's WWE Champion Drew McIntyre. Now, we also saw superstars from Monday Night Raw appearing on SmackDown this past week, or scheduled to appear on SmackDown in the future. We had NXT champion Charlotte Flair, who, to be honest, ever since she won the NXT championship, which, looking back, what purpose did that serve? I mean, that's a discussion for another day and another video, really, isn't it? But Charlotte Flair appeared on SmackDown because we need more Charlotte Flair. We need more Charlotte Flair, don't we? We don't. That's a spoiler. We don't. She appeared on SmackDown, had an interaction with Bayley and Sasha Banks. I mean, we don't need to see another Bayley versus Charlotte Flair match in the future, but that's what that is. And we also, curiously, saw on the bracket of the Intercontinental Championship tournament, for the vacant Intercontinental Championship after Sami Zayn was stripped, we saw that Raw's phenomenal AJ Styles will be appearing on Friday Night SmackDown in that tournament at some point, and could potentially be the SmackDown Intercontinental Champion in the future. Monday Night Raw's AJ Styles could be a champion on Friday Night SmackDown. So, to break all of that down, as I mentioned at the top, this is reportedly due to Monday Night Raw's USA Network executives and Friday Night SmackDown's Fox executives wanting more star power on the show because their show's ratings are going down the tube. Now, this isn't anything new with WWE. The ratings have been declining for a long, long time. But obviously, due to the situation of the world at the moment, and the empty arena shows, people just aren't watching. Now, I think there's a lot to be discussed about why people aren't watching. There's several reasons as to why people aren't watching. Is it because the product is very bad? Probably. Is it because of the empty arena and not having fans in the show? That's certainly a factor of it. Is it because people, quite frankly, have bigger and more important things to be worrying about, to be watching at this moment? I think, in my opinion, I think that's the biggest factor in it at the moment. Look, professional wrestling is great, and professional wrestling is something that I love to watch and millions of people around the world love to watch. But at these trying times at the moment, is it something that is really, really important? And to be honest, the answer there is absolutely no, isn't it? People are watching the news, people are watching social media, people are watching everything, people are searching for jobs. The amount of people that are unemployed at the moment, people are trying to get to grips of what the hell is going on in the world at the moment, and professional wrestling falls at the wayside. People have suggested at certain points, well, shouldn't more people be watching it than ever? You know, people are going to be at home, people are going to have nothing to do, people have been furloughed, people have been out of work. There should be more people watching Raw and SmackDown and NXT and AEW than ever before. Well, that just isn't the case. Obviously, the ratings themselves reflect that, but people are cutting the cords in terms of their cable providers, and like I said, people just have more important things to do, and then on top of that, the shows themselves just aren't that good. They just aren't that gripping at the moment, and that, if you put them all together, you get declining ratings, you get declining live viewership, and you get to where we're at now with Fox and USA saying, please, 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 bring more superstars over. We need more superstars. And this was the same problem last year. Remember that Raw and SmackDown now have done this attempt at a brand split, a hard brand split, several times, and what happens? The same thing happens every time. It gets murky, it gets mixed up. You have SmackDown superstars appearing on Raw, you have Raw superstars appearing on SmackDown. Eventually, the brand split disappears, and we just go back to what it was previously in the likes of the Attitude Era, whereby there is no brand split, you just have a Raw and SmackDown. You maybe have a very, very soft brand split where certain superstars appear more often on SmackDown and Raw, but it's certainly not a hard and fast rule. And that was the problem last year with the Wildcard rule. And I mentioned that this is the return of the Wildcard rule because that's exactly what it is. Last year, we had the Superstar Shake-Up post-WrestleMania, and WWE did such a bad job of putting new superstars on SmackDown, new superstars on Raw, that USA Network, who at the time, of course, had both Monday Night Raw and then Tuesday Night SmackDown, they weren't happy with the rosters that they'd selected. They said, we want, for instance, Roman Reigns went from Raw to SmackDown. They said, look, we want Roman Reigns on both shows. I think one of them was Andrade. Andrade, at the time, didn't he go to Raw? And SmackDown went, whoa, we liked having that demographic, the Latino demographic on the Tuesday. Bring him back. And eventually WWE went, okay, Vince McMahon came out after a couple of weeks because the ratings themselves, once again, it's what it comes down to, ratings and live viewership weren't great. So Vince McMahon came out, I believe it was on Raw, and said there's a wild card rule. At the time, it was something like 3 superstars from SmackDown could appear on Raw and 3 superstars from Raw could appear on SmackDown. Eventually, that rule, like any rule in WWE, disappeared very quickly, and just everyone was appearing on every show, regardless of what brand they were originally decided to go in. And people were frustrated with that and annoyed by it because the WWE still had this facade that the Raw and SmackDown brands were separate. And I think that's the main issue here, isn't it? The main issue is that, for me, I like the brand split. I really do like the brand split. I think with the size of the talent roster that WWE has at their disposal, the amount of people they have under contract, even after they furloughed and released so many people due to the current climate that we're in, they have so many people under contract, the most people under contract that they've ever had throughout their history. So the ability to do a brand split is absolutely there, and I like it. I grew up on the Ruthless Aggression brand split, where for a period of time Raw and SmackDown were certainly a hard brand split shows. However, if WWE doesn't want to do that, don't do it. I don't mind. You have such a big roster that you should, but I don't mind. But the thing is, you can't be, as Vince McMahon would often say, you can't be half pregnant. And I love that that's a Vince McMahon saying, because every time they try and do a brand split, they do try and be half pregnant. Because you have it hard and fast brand split for a while, but then they just give up on it. But they still try and keep up that Raw and SmackDown are separate. And that's the annoying thing for me when it comes to the wildcard rule, is that they still try and pretend that Raw and SmackDown are separate, but they're not. Just say Raw and SmackDown aren't separate, we're not doing a brand split anymore, and then that's fine. That's fine. And then you don't have to have this, this is a wildcard rule, this is this is this. It's rubbish. It's rubbish, and it's insulting to the intelligence of the audience. That's my biggest frustration with it. They were saying, the wild card rule, blah, blah, blah. Just say, you know what, we've scrapped the brand split. This is what it is. I wouldn't like that. I would prefer that they kept the hard and fast brand split, and if they actually had compelling television and they had good writing and they had good storyline and matches that were worth seeing and television programs that were worth watching, they wouldn't have this problem altogether. That's the main problem. Just splitting up the rosters and moving them back together again isn't going to solve your problem of suffering ratings and declining ratings. What's really going to solve that is having compelling television, doing something different and doing something that's worth watching in these trying times. That's what's going to change things. Not moving the rosters back together. That's a short-term fix that's putting your finger over a leak when you're already knee-deep in water. Okay, the ship is sinking. Easy for me to say. That's the real issue here. That's the real issue when it comes to the wildcard rule. And to be honest, it's only going to get worse. Now, they're not calling this the wildcard rule. I believe they're calling it like an invitation to other brands or something of that effect. And they're saying that a superstar can appear. So, for instance, a superstar from Raw could appear on SmackDown up to 4 times a year. That's the rule they're saying at the moment. 4 times a year, someone from one brand can appear on another brand. I'm telling you now, that is not going to happen. It's only going to get worse. That rule will probably be in effect for, I don't know, a month, 2 months tops. Even if that, things move so quickly in WWE that it's not going to last very long. I think it's just a given, isn't it? Because WWE, like I said, they have these rules for a very short period of time and then they change. The wildcard rule was exactly the same last year. Oh, you can only have 3 people from SmackDown appear on Raw. There was some shows on Monday Night Raw, and especially on SmackDown, where you pretty much had the whole Raw roster. And then add in Kofi Kingston as the WWE Champion. That was SmackDown on Tuesday nights for a period of time last year. And again, I don't have a problem with it. I really don't have a problem with it, as long as you just say, we're not having Raw and SmackDown rosters. But this idea that there is some kind of split, some kind of, difference between the rosters is just farcical. It's absolutely farcical. And like I said, it's going to be worse. And the main thing is that WWE needs to make their mind up. They need to make their mind up. And like I said, I would prefer a hard brand split. I do think a hard brand split can work. It has the potential to work. If you look at the early 2000s, when they did it properly and they had completely different shows, it did work. But apparently we're never going to see it because WWE is so narrow-minded, and so they're almost 5 years behind in all of this, aren't they? It's not. We've had people come out and say how to do a hard brand split. And I say it's not that hard, all of that sort of stuff. You have the pressures of different corporate environments. I understand that. And you have the pressure of television ratings, which is why we're at the wildcard rule at the moment. But the way to have a hard brand split is you need to make the shows different from each other. Now, I credit WWE in terms of having the sets different. That's good. And you have different announcers and you have different talent rosters. But the shows themselves, when you boil it down, are pretty much the same. The storylines are similar. And when you have 2 talents appearing on both shows, that's similar as well. You need to make the shows different. The way you shoot them, even the content, one needs to be more edgy than the other. You're not going to have edgy programming on Fox because it's network television. On USA Network, historically, you would be able to get away with a little bit more. So maybe Monday Night Raw needs to go a little bit edgy. That 3rd hour, which is a terrible hour, that goes from 10 to 11. Surely you can do a little bit more risque television programming. Obviously, WWE wouldn't because they're PG and that's just how they work and how they've worked for years. But surely that's the way you differentiate. You need to differentiate the shows from each other, not go in the other direction and just make them all the same. I don't understand how that can be their idea that this is the way that they can fix their sinking ship of television ratings, is by just moving everyone onto the same roster. Would you have more star power? Maybe. But at the moment, which full-time wrestlers on the WWE roster are actual draws? You had the likes of Edge and Randy Orton come back on Monday Night Raw, and you brought in 300,000 more viewers than you did the previous week. So I think that says a lot itself. And you've also now had the likes of Becky Lynch disappearing for the foreseeable future for a very, very long time. So that's someone else who's lost his style, which again might be the reason that they've implemented this new version of the wildcard rule. But to me, it just doesn't make any sense. And I mentioned earlier AJ Styles is going to appear on Friday Night SmackDown in the SmackDown Intercontinental Championship tournament. What happens if he wins that tournament? I think there's a really good chance he could win that. And then what happens then? Then you have the situation where you had like the Revival last year. You had the Raw Tag Team as the SmackDown Tag Team Champions. And at that point, the whole essence of a brand split is stupid. And it's just ridiculous because you look back on when SmackDown debuted on Fox last year and you had the draft on SmackDown a couple weeks later and you had the draft on Raw a couple weeks later, and even when they had that draft, the people who were being drafted to Raw and being drafted to SmackDown were pretty much originally drafted to Raw and SmackDown. It didn't make any sense at the time, and now it looks like it makes even less sense. It's just, to me, it's confusing. It's confusing. I thought coming out of WrestleMania, like we have in most years, we would maybe see a superstar shake-up or another draft or something of that effect. But WWE just can't help themselves. They really can't help themselves. They get bored so quickly, which then leads to another wildcard rule. And I remember some of those televisions last year when the wildcard rule was implemented, and some of those TVs were just tough to watch, really tough to watch. And to be honest, when you've got a full roster of lots of available players to use, we heard those rumours last year, didn't they? Every single week, it felt like on a Tuesday around 5 or 6 o'clock in the afternoon, we would hear a report. Vince McMahon has torn up the script for Smackdown on USA Network and has done a complete rewrite. People who were due to appear on the show haven't appeared on the show. If you've got a full roster that you can use, that just gives Vince McMahon more rope, to make a mess of things, to rewrite the show, to change the show, to start to do things over again because he doesn't like what it is. He can bring people in from Raw, bring these people in from Raw for the main event. And it's the same thing for Raw. It's the same thing for Raw. You're going to be like, okay, we can bring in so-and-so from Friday Night SmackDown. Braun Strowman and Bray Wyatt can go on Raw because they're big draws. They do the big numbers. Daniel Bryan can appear on Raw. It's just ridiculous. And when you have, like they had previously, you had Kofi Kingston, the WWE champion, appearing on Raw. Well, he's SmackDown's champion. It just doesn't make any sense. And that's the frustrating thing. It insults the intelligence of the viewer because you try and make logic where there is none. As a viewer, you try and make logic and you try and go, well, maybe he's the champion on SmackDown, but he's going to Raw, but there's this rule that you can appear on Raw or you can appear on 4 times a year, but wait a minute, isn't this his 5th or 6th time appearing on the show this year? They don't care about logic. WWE has very rarely cared about logic, and we praise them when they try and do logic, but we should also criticise them when there is no logic, and that's the problem with these wildcard rules and these quick changes and WWE's insistence on not trying to let things work, let things grow. I worry about people like the likes of Buddy Murphy. He's not called Buddy Murphy anymore. I worry about the likes of Murphy, and I worry about the likes of Aleister Black, and I worry about whoever of these young talent, because when you have both rosters available for both shows, that leads to the same talent being booked over and over again on both shows, and that's how you have someone like a Murphy, you have someone like an Aleister Black, you have someone like a Chad Gable, a Mustafa Ali. They get stuck. People are leaving WWE and requesting their release and now getting the release on their contracts because they're not being used in the way that they would like, or they're not being used at all. Think of how much that could increase when you've got the same talent being booked for both shows now. Just think, someone like a Mustafa Ali, is he going to get booked for SmackDown at all? Now, obviously, he's the hacker, so maybe that's not the best example to use. But I think of a Buddy Murphy. Would he have got that opportunity if you'd have had the big stars like a Roman Reigns, like a Bray Wyatt, like a Daniel Bryan, etc., being available to Monday Night Raw at the same time? I don't think so. I really don't think so. And he, to me, has been a success story on Monday Night Raw. He's been elevated to a new level. I don't think that would have happened if the wildcard rule was in place. So I worry about the younger talent, and I worry about them wanting to leave now. But the problem is, I suppose, for WWE is if they want to leave, they can. They're granting releases whenever they would like. So other companies like an AEW, like a New Japan, like an Impact Wrestling, like an NWA are probably, licking their lips and rubbing their hands because they're looking at this going, hey, maybe some talent isn't going to get used and we can finally use them the way they should be. That's just the ripple effect of what the wildcard rule can do. And I think that's something that WWE really doesn't consider. I don't think they've considered the unhappiness of the talent. I don't think they've considered the unhappiness of the fans. It's a short-term fix. Will it boost ratings? Maybe for a couple of weeks. Albeit slightly, if that. But look, the trend is, while we have these empty arena shows going on, and WWE can't change this, and I wouldn't recommend at all them going back to crowds anytime soon, regardless of how big those crowds were. I just think they need to shift their style of programming. They need to do something different. The cinematic wrestling matches are something that I think is definitely a solution to this. Having more of an inside look at things, of how things are going on. Heck, air The Undertaker's documentary on Monday Night Raw instead of Monday Night Raw. That'll probably bring in more viewers and it'll certainly be a better watch. There's a lot of things that WWE can do to improve the situation at the moment. I don't think implementing the Wildcard Rule Volume 2 or 3 or whatever it is the way to do it. But what do you think? What do you think of the return of the wildcard rule? What do you think of this rule that superstars can appear on the opposite brand up to 4 times a year? Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Are you interested? Are you more likely to watch Monday Night Raw or Friday Night Smackdown or NXT or whatever program because of it? Let me know in the comment section below, and don't forget to like, share and subscribe to this video. You can subscribe by clicking the bottom right hand corner now, or if you wait a few seconds at the end of this video, there'll be a subscribe button and another video for you to watch. You can also go to our channel and subscribe there and look at all the videos that we've produced in the history of this channel. Be sure to follow us on all of our social media platforms, also in the comment section below. Thank you very much for watching, listening, streaming, or however you've come across this video today, and I'm sure I'll speak with you again very, very soon. Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.